Back now with our guest, Frank Benjamin, who is an incredible personality, media personality, and also gives so much back to the community for many years.
I'm going to start asking for more money. Keep building me up.
And we also have Mike Strong. He is the director of Par for the Cure, an organization that for the past 14 years has raised money for brain tumor research. And Mike, event coming up June 15th, parforthecure.com to get information. But I want to start out by asking you how this whole thing got started. You have a friend.
Yeah, my friend passed away in 1998. And so the following year I rode the PMC in his memory. Hadn't been on a bike for several years, quite a few years actually. And so I bought a new bike, trained, and I rode the PMC in his memory. And my brother said, "Gee, if you want to do this every year instead of," and I solicited friends and family to write checks. He said, "If you're going to do this every year, I mean, it might be hard to raise the money. You should start a golf tournament." So we did. So in 2000, we had our first Par for the Cure. But we had about 96 golfers. We made about an $8,000, $9,000 donation in my friends in Lenny's to the Jimmy Fund. Yep, in Lenny's memory, and that's sort of how it started.
You know, you and I have been to some of the brain tumor survivor groups at Dana-Farber, which is really an eye-opener. You have some of these folks who either are undergoing some kind of treatment, just found out, or have been going through it for many years, multiple times, and their spouses. One of the most striking things for me in there was just how upbeat they were and positive.
Mm-hmm.
Here they are being told, you
Might die.
Might die.
Soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say it all the time, whether it's from the podium or just to people. I can't imagine sitting across from that doctor and having the doctor say, "You have a brain tumor," with the scans up on the up on the glass and everything. But our goal is to have the doctors in the same breath say, "But I have something that'll work." And that day that we went to film, this gentleman Mark he had to be wheeled in a wheelchair. He could barely walk. You saw the horseshoe scar on the side of his head. That was in the first week of February, I believe. The first Friday of February, we went and filmed. And 6 weeks later, he walked himself pretty comfortably into the golf ball. He had his first treatment that day of a drug called Avastin, and that's a drug that we had helped fund the clinical trials of. And Avastin is able to break the blood-brain barrier and cut off the blood supply to the tumor. So here's a guy who could barely walk because of his tumor, and 6 weeks later he walked in, and I haven't heard back from them, but he is adamant about playing in this golf tournament.
Wow.
So that would be quite the victory. So
you've talked to the doctors at Dana-Farber. You've had firsthand experience in there. What's the feeling among doctors in terms of finding a cure?
they are convinced within, I forget the time frame they put on, I don't know if they say 10 years, but they are convinced they are so close, it's just going to become a chronic illness. And you're just given a medication and you go about your business, much like bronchitis or other chronic illnesses, which is pretty incredible. Breast cancer is a very high cure rate percentage, as opposed to in the 70s and 80s when it was just epidemic. I think because it was so epidemic, because so many women and some men were diagnosed with breast cancer, a ton of funding went into it. Brain tumors, there aren't a lot of cases, and there's not a whole lot of long-range survivors, so there's no measuring stick to go by. We understand that this worked, and if a woman has breast cancer, they can have a mastectomy, and if all the cancer is removed, they can live a long life with the reconstructive surgeries and everything, and they go about their lives. You can't remove a brain.
In every community, there's someone that has cancer. It has just become so prevalent.
The coach of Central Catholic Basketball will be my guest next week. His two children, one was born with a certain kind of cancer, I'm not sure. And when he talked to the doctor about having another kid, and the doctor said, there's only a 2% chance that that would happen again. Think of what happened again. And he's got 2 young children. He's the head basketball coach at Central Catholic. They're back and forth to the hospital constantly. You know, that the alarm goes off in the house. They got to go to Boston and everything. So, I mean, it's just incredible. And as you heard me say, I had, within the last month, I've had 2 sister-in-law. Well, I've had 3 die, but 2 of them died of cancer.
Wow.
What motivates you besides your friend?
I mean, that's how it started, and quite honestly, I thought, I'm going to ride the PMC once in his memory.
That's it.
One time. And then the Pan Mass Challenge is a pretty incredible bike ride. 5,000 bikes, people lining the sides of the road, holding signs, I'm a survivor, thank you riders, thanks for riding. You pull into this one water stop on Saturday, and they have a pedal partner program, so groups, teams will ride for certain patients, and you go and you meet your patient, and here's this little bald kid, you know, sitting there, happy as can be that you're riding for him or her. It's pretty powerful. Of course, you know, we met the twins right away. The twins have been with us almost since the beginning. They were actually a pedal partner of a team I was on the first year we had the golf tournament. I had ridden the PMC, I met a group of people, I joined their team, and the following year, this woman, 2 weeks after the golf tournament, said, hey guys, I teamed us up with these pedal partners, they're twins from Peabody, and they both have brain tumors. And I had just donated, we had just raised the $8,000 2 weeks before. So right out of the gate, I sort of felt that there was sort of something going on there. So, you know, you get to meet them and
A calling?
a little bit of a calling. So then along the way, we meet patients. We met Melinda Winetic from up in Merrimack. And she was the first human being I ever met that had been on the Avastin treatment. I do meet with the doctors, and years ago I went to them and I basically said, show me what you're doing. I want to know where our money's going. And Dr. Wen, who's just incredible and incredibly patient and incredibly committed to finding a cure, showed me this. It wasn't even a name for it yet, XG731 or whatever their code name is for the drugs they're working on. And he showed me these scans, and before the treatment, there's this big mass on somebody's brain, and after X amount of treatments, whatever his number was, it was gone. So I'm blown away. So now, I went down to Washington, D.C. to Brain Tumor Awareness Week one year, and we're paired up with people from our state to go lobby our senators and representatives to increase funding for brain tumor research, but do something like just make May National Brain Tumor Awareness Month. You have a national, watermelon month. You have a national chicken month. You have a national pizza month. But there was no National Brain Tumor Awareness Month. So after our visit, they actually had May is now the Brain Tumor Awareness Month in this country. So anyway, I'm behind the Senate building, and I'm talking to this woman, and I think she is. I don't know if she's a patient. No, we were in a meeting before we were going to see the senators, and I said, so are you like with the Brain Tumor Society or something? She said, well, no, I'm a patient. Really? Where? Dana-Farber. Who's your doctor? Dr. Wen. So we sat behind the Senate building. Her sister was living in Virginia, so she went off to meet with her senators from Virginia, and she told me her story, and she said, I had a treatment of Avastin last night. I feel great. And she was unbelievable. And so she passed away, and our money now funds the Melinda M. Winetic Brain Tumor Research Fund.
Wow.
So that her family wanted to start a fund, and it takes X amount of dollars to do it. And since our money's going to the doctor anyways, and since she had such a profound impact on me that particular year, why have the family have to try to mortgage their house to create this fund? So I guess that's part of it, because we meet people like Mindy, people like Michelle, who just passed away in April. You just keep meeting people along the way. Beth Ann.
Yeah.
You just meet these people and you go, all right.
Sure, that's a part of the thing that keeps you going, keeps you after all these years coming.
It's pretty easy. As I started to tell you before, my brother is a teacher, educator, and I found out the good feeling he had when he bought a kid a jacket, or he went to a kid's house and helped them. I found out the same thing when I was dealing with kids. the thing that I do have a lot of problem with, as you speak of cancer, the kids that are sick with it, that you just, you know, if you see them on TV and you see them sans hair and stuff like that, you know, like your hands are tied and you're saying that you just got to have some kind of a belief in something that this is terrible and it's still happening to kids. I mean, if a guy's 70 years old and, you know, you got one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel, you don't worry about it, you know. But with kids, it just, I've done a lot of fundraising with different people, running softball tournaments, big boat races and everything. And, you know, I don't see where the money goes. I just know it's going to a good thing, and when I'm done, I'm exhausted, and the people that helped me are exhausted. But when you hit the shower that night, you're saying, well, I did something good.
And you hit the shower and you say, I really have no problems.
Yeah.
When you meet the families, I mean, it really puts your life in perspective.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we've been talking about me being sick for a while. I had the MRSA infection that could wipe you out, you know, but I've never had any pain, thank God, knock on wood. And you just know these people are in a lot of pain, a lot of these people, how they would stand it and everything. I mean, I know I'd be a big sissy to go through what they're going through, but I said to a friend of mine that I brought down to the place in Burlington for cancer treatment, and I said, Eddie, what happens when they tell you you got cancer? What happens? He says, for Christ's sake, you can't tell them, take it back. You got it, and you got to live with it, you know. And he told me before he went, he said, Frankie, I used to say, I'm not afraid of dying, I'm not afraid of dying. He said, well, anybody tells you that, they're full of crap. He says, because it starts getting close and you worry, and you just wonder what goes. My sister-in-law, my brother told me yesterday that one night she called him, like about a month ago, sit in the bed next to her, hold her hand, and she said, Dick, do you think I'm going tonight? You know, because she was going downhill, you know. And he choked up talking about it, and it's just so, you know, it's just so effectual and your hands are tied. But you know what you're doing, you might trip into something and you might be the answer to it.
Right.
You know, and can you imagine if that ever happened?
Talk a little bit about people who want to register, obviously go to your website, what the day entails, obviously golf and then a clam bake.
And food, yeah. 7:30 tea time, and when you show up at each course, it's a pretty good spread. There's, you know, bagels and donuts and coffee and some breads. Iggy's bread. All donated, yeah. Yeah, Iggy's bread gives us a bunch of breads for it. Heavenly Donuts up this way. They're very generous. They help us out. And then we put food out on the course. There's a shrimp cocktail hole, a fresh fruit hole, a whole chips and Cheez-Its and snacks and stuff, and then a hot dog hole.
It gets
and then
even
afterwards,
better.
right? And then afterwards, we have the two courses, and they're about 20 miles apart. So the Plastow Fish and Game up in Plastow, New Hampshire, just over the Haverhill border. We bring both groups of people to that venue, and we have a clam bake with lobsters and steamers and mussels and clam chowder and corn on the cob and barbecue with ribs and pulled pork and hot dogs and dirty rice and
It's a really
more
fun
bread.
event. You two really exemplify why I have this show, Hometown Talents and Treasures, because you give back to the community. You both are incredible treasures, and the community is very fortunate to have both of you giving of your time.
Well, you know something? A lot of people want to jump on board. They just don't know how. And they just
good
have
point,
to have
Frank.
somebody say to them, please. And it's much more than giving a $10 bill, because you might have to give a few weeks or maybe a month, because these things don't run overnight. You've got to, you know, put this all together, the food, the time, and everything. But there are many people that jump on board.
Yeah, when asked. You good point, Frank, because I know, Mike, you are looking for volunteers.
Volunteers, yeah. We're looking for there are some golf slots still available, but volunteers were a little thin on this year.
And
So
what, for people listening, what kind of volunteers doing what?
out on the, at the
Serving
golf courses,
food.
helping. Yeah, right, exactly. Out on the course, working a food hole or a competition hole. We have a couple of closest to the pin competitions. And then at the clam bake, especially serving food, helping us prep the food and cook it.
You talked about some of the inspirational people that you've had come into your life, and that keeps you going. Talk a little bit about how faith has played a part in this.
Oh, it plays a big part. There's a scripture quote, and I couldn't quote the verse, but whatsoever you do for the least of my brothers, you do for me. It's all about service. Everything is all about service. So I always feel if I'm serving my fellows, I'm serving God. And I heard this quote one time. I sought my God, a God I could not see. I sought my soul, but my soul eluded me. But when I sought my fellow man, I found all three. And that kind of sums it up.
Frank, can you
Well,
follow
it's
that?
hard to follow that. But
I
you know
was
what I
just saying,
usually
can you
say?
follow? Oh, wait.
To people,
Yes, something about a car and driving.
say it again.
Car, and if you want to drive, make sure
Make sure if you're driving, make sure you have a car. No, but I always say this when I'm stumped, and I used to say this to some of the kids, and I used to say it to my softball team. No matter how high a seagull flies, you can always break a pane of glass with a hammer. See, it doesn't mean anything, but it breaks the tension.
That's your final word.
That's my final word. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
I
Frank,
wish you luck
thank
on your
you.
thing, and
Thank you.
I'll tell you, I'll buy a hole for you. I'll be glad to buy a hole.
Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Hometown Talents and Treasures, and we'll see you next week.